Book of Jubilees. Prologue. This is the history of the division of the days of the law and of the testimony, of the events of the years, of their weeks, of their jubilees, throughout all the years of the world, as the Lord spake to Moses on Mount Sinai, when he went up to receive the tables of the law and of the commandment, according to the voice of God, as he said unto him, Go up to the top of the mount. God's revelation to Moses on Mount Sinai. And it came to pass in the first year of the exodus of the children of Israel out of Egypt, in the 3rd month, on the 16th day of the month, that God spake to Moses, saying, Come up to me on the mount, and I will give thee 2 tables of stone of the law and of the commandment, which I have written, that thou mayst teach them. And Moses went up into the mount of God, and the glory of the Lord abode on Mount Sinai, and a cloud overshadowed it 6 days. And he called to Moses on the 7th day out of the midst of the cloud, and the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a flaming fire on the top of the mount. And Moses was on the mount 40 days and 40 nights. And God taught him the earlier and the later history of the division of all the days of the law and of the testimony. And he said, Incline thine heart to every word which I shall speak to thee on this mount, and write them in a book, in order that their generations may see how I have not forsaken them for all the evil which they have wrought in transgressing the covenant which I established between me and thee for their generations this day on Mount Sinai. And thus it will come to pass, when all these things come upon them, that they will recognize that I am more righteous than they in all their judgments and in all their actions, and they will recognize that I have been truly with them. And do thou write for thyself all these words which I declare unto thee this day. For I know their rebellion and their stiff neck, before I bring them into the land of which I swear to their fathers, to Abraham and to Isaac and to Jacob, saying, Unto your seed will I give a land flowing with milk and honey. And they will eat and be satisfied, and they will turn to strange gods, to gods which cannot deliver them from aught of their tribulation. And this witness shall be heard for a witness against them. For they will forget all my commandments, even all that I command them. And they will walk after the Gentiles, and after their uncleanness, and after their shame, and will serve their gods. And these will prove unto them an offense, and a tribulation, and an affliction, and a snare. And many will perish, and they will be taken captive, and will fall into the hands of the enemy, because they have forsaken my ordinances and my commandments, and the festivals of my covenant, and my Sabbaths, and holy place, which I have hallowed for myself in their midst, and my tabernacle, and my sanctuary, which I have hallowed for myself in the midst of the land, that I should set my name upon it, and that it should dwell there. And they will make to themselves high places, and groves, and graven images, and they will worship each his own graven image, so as to go astray. And they will sacrifice their children to demons, and to all the works of the error of their hearts. And I will send witnesses unto them, that I may witness against them, but they will not hear, and will slay the witnesses also. And they will persecute those who seek the law, and they will abrogate and change everything, so as to work evil before my eyes. And I shall hide my face from them, and I shall deliver them into the hand of the Gentiles for captivity, and for a prey, and for devouring. And I shall remove them from the midst of the land, and I will scatter them amongst the Gentiles. And they will forget all my law, and all my commandments, and all my judgments, and will go astray as to new moons, and Sabbaths, and festivals, and jubilees, and ordinances. And after this they will turn to me from amongst the Gentiles, with all their heart, and with all their soul, and with all their strength. And I shall gather them from amongst the Gentiles, and they will seek me, so that I shall be found of them, when they seek me with all their heart and with all their soul. And I shall disclose to them abounding peace with righteousness, and I will plant them the plant of uprightness in the land with all my heart and with all my soul. And they will be for a blessing, and not for a curse, and they will be the head and not the tail. And I shall build my sanctuary in their midst, and I shall dwell with them, and I shall be their God, and they will be my people in truth and righteousness, and I shall not forsake them nor fail them, for I am the Lord their God. And Moses fell on his face and prayed and said, O Lord my God, do not forsake thy people and thy inheritance, so that they should wander in the error of their hearts. And do not deliver them over into the hands of their enemies, the Gentiles, lest they should rule over them and cause them to sin against thee. Let thy mercy, O Lord, be lifted up upon thy people, and create in them an upright spirit. And let not the spirit of Belial rule over them to accuse them before thee, and to ensnare them from all the paths of righteousness, so that they may perish from before thy face. But they are thy people, and thy inheritance, which thou hast delivered with thy great power from the hands of the Egyptians. Create in them a clean heart and a holy spirit, and let them not be ensnared in their sins from henceforth until eternity. And the Lord said unto Moses, I know their contrariness, and their thoughts, and their stiff-neckedness, and they will not be obedient till they confess their own sin, and the sin of their fathers. And after this they will turn to me in all uprightness, and with all their heart and with all their soul, and I shall circumcise the foreskin of their heart, and the foreskin of the heart of their seed. And I shall create in them a holy spirit, and I shall cleanse them, so that they shall not turn away from me from that day unto eternity. And their souls will cleave to me and to all my commandments, and they will fulfill all my commandments. And I shall be their father, and they will be my children. And they will all be called children of the living God. And every angel and every spirit will know, yea, they will know that these are my children, and that I am their Father in uprightness and righteousness, and that I love them. And do thou write down for thyself all these words which I declare unto thee on this mountain, the first and the last, which shall come to pass in all the divisions of the days in the law, and in the testimony, and in the weeks and the jubilees unto eternity, until I descend and dwell with them throughout eternity.
Who isn't Israel? Well, who is Israel? Is it genetically, oh, you have to have the DNA? Or is it a choice? Well, what did Yahweh say? Certainly there was a certain genetic blessing, sons of Abraham, children of Abraham, B'nai Israel, sons of Israel. But he said Yahweh said there's one Torah for the native born and the proselyte or sojourner, which is the one who says, hey, I want to hang out with you guys. So remember the book of Ruth. Naomi was you call it indigenous, native-born Israelite, and Ruth was her Moabite daughter-in-law, but her Naomi's son, Ruth's husband, had died, and Ruth said, hey, listen, just go back with your people, have a nice life. I got to go back and be a poor widow in the land. And Ruth said, where am I going to go? My culture has no answers. My culture does not know Yahuwah. My culture is a heretical pagans worshiping Elohim Achrim, and I don't want to re-engage them. I'm going to go with you, dear mother-in-law, Naomi. Your people will be my people. Your Elohim, I choose to be my Elohim. So I will learn of him, and I will walk in his ways, and I will look to you for guidance and counsel. And if you're a poor, destitute widow, then so am I. As the book of Ruth goes on to say, she became what would ultimately be the great-great-grandmother of King David, because of her heart. What the book of Jubilees says, and I don't think it much matters as to whether it was written in 200 BC or whether it was of more ancient time, but if you listen to just the first chapter, which is what Kurt's going to put up for the recording here, it's a perspective, it's a expectation, it's a realization, it's a consciousness that says, who is Israel? What does it mean if I'm not Israel? Who is Yahuwah? What's his deal with Israel? And the interesting thing, if you look at Deuteronomy 30, Jeremiah 31, and Isaiah and Ezekiel and Zechariah, it's all over the Tanakh, the Old Testament. Yahweh says, this is what's going to happen. Well, if he says this is what's going to happen, and it's written into is he causing it, or does he just know what's going to happen? It's written into the plan. What the plan is, he says, I know you guys are stiff-necked, hard-hearted, and you don't give a rat's patootie about me and my ways. And so I'm going to give you the truth. I'm going to give you the blessing. And then you guys are going to get so content that you're going to forget me. And you're going to say, is this all there is? We talked about that last week. Ein Od Zulti, Ein Elohim. There is no other Elohim. Zulti, Zayin Vav Lamed Tav Yod. Zayin Vav Lamed, glutton, cheap, lavish. He's going to give his people so much stuff, and then they just go, just waste it. Just who cares? Whatever. Is this all there is? Let's go find something else. Hey, the Assyrians, the Egyptians, the Chinese, they got some pretty cool graphic motifs. They get to dress up in interesting costumes, and hey, they're orgies, that's so. And it's like, and Yahweh said, I told you not to do that. Remember what he said to Adam and Hua in the garden? Don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because if you do, you'll die. That's what he said to Israel. Here's my Torah, and if you go after Elohim Achrim, you're going to die culturally, socially, and personally, and the kingdom will die. That's a fractal model of Yeshua coming here and dying 3 days and 3 nights in the grave. It's like Jonah, 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish. And then he was vomited out alive, and Yeshua was Pezadi, vomited out. Zadi Aleph is actually the word for vomit, but Yeshua rose from the grave, resurrected. That's a fractal pattern of what's going to happen to humanity, and specifically Israel, and also more specifically, each one of us. Not just in the overall, yes, everybody who dies is going to come back to life and stand before the judgment, but circumstantially, there's a death before the ultimate death, you could say, and it's like, well, what is that death? The train wreck. Best train wreck cinematographically captured by Steven Spielberg in the movie called Super 8. A couple minutes long. In the story, for whatever reason, it's at night, and then this train with just mass and movement, speed, derails, and all the cars are just exploding and flying, and to be raised to try to be an intellectual, to try to be capable, competent, a believer, a faithful, a patriot, and then think that you understand how the system works, a scientist. And then all of a sudden one day to realize there's something very wrong. Mention the movie Zeitgeist. Zeitgeist. Zeit is where we get the Hebrew word Zayin Aleph Tav, pronounced Zeit. I don't know if it's German perhaps, but Geist is where we get the word ghost or spirit. So it's translated spirit of this age. It's like spirit of this age, Zeitgeist. There's at least a couple of them. I don't know who produced them. They came out a few years back. But the interesting thing about that movie is that all the people are doing is showing you, let's call them news events over a few decades, maybe a few centuries. And they're saying, you notice something's going on? You notice something doesn't add up? You notice we're being lied to? You notice that there's a puppet masters of a shadow government, of a deep state? You ever stop to think why things don't add up? Why 2 + 2, it doesn't equal 4? You have an election and somebody else gets elected. How'd that happen? Well, because the CIA was operating in various other countries around the world, and that's what they do. Oh, you thought I was talking about the United States? No, it's other countries. Oh, wait a minute, didn't it happen here too? Well, that's just what happens. Why was there an artist who painted 3 cloud patterns that look exactly the same? It was an intentional tip to anybody who looks and knows art that doesn't happen in nature. That's not random. That's specifically the signature of the artist saying, I did this. It's not true. Why not just take a picture of Earth from outer space with one of their telescopes? You can take a picture of Neptune. You can take a picture of Uranus. Those are too difficult to see on your own. You need help. Well, they have special cameras. Why not just turn and take a picture of the Earth? Why do they have to modify it? Well, why don't they just tell us what the translation of the Hebrew words are? Because as soon as you translate it, it's artistic. Even this eriktology thing, as soon as I say, well, what does this word mean? Well, now I'm wrapping my head around it. So I can't tell you that with absolute, the word in Hebrew is tam, tav mem. It means pure, it means perfect, it means artless and naive. Well, wait a minute, isn't naivete ignorance and no, nothing? Isn't that like chosek? Isn't that a type of illiteracy or ignorance or darkness? Well, it's kind of the same thing, but it's the opposite. In other words, tav mem is so pure. It's kadosh. It's so perfect. It's so unaffected by human artistry or interpretation. So when it says there's none perfect, no, not one. Who's he talking about? Well, from what I was taught, it's like, okay, everybody's a dirty, rotten sinner. Everybody's going to burn in hell unless you're saved by the believing the blood of Jesus. And then, whew, thank you very much. Now I get to go to heaven because I'm in imputed righteousness. Okay, I'm not going to argue or deny that. But what I'm saying is that what he's talking about? If he says there's none righteous, then why was John the Baptist's parents called perfect? Tom. Why was Abraham considered Tom? What is perfect? Is a perfect human being saying that you have to be now angelic? Or is it simply a human being being a human being? What is a perfect human being? Well, there ain't no perfect human being. Really? Is that what he designed? Did he design an impossibility? Or is the measure of perfection within the zone, the realm of what he did design us humans to be? Well, then how do we humans rise to the potential of being the people he wants us to be? It's building a consciousness. How do you do that? Where does it start? Those list of verbs that, the 22 lists of verbs, Hebrew verbs, that we put on the handout a couple weeks ago. Those are all just my whimsical ponderings. 22 Hebrew verbs, and there's more than 22 because some verbs are synonyms with other verbs. So I had 2 or 3 in one space. And then I thought, well, wait a minute, if you could organize these, index them as a consciousness, as where do you start and where do you end up, and how does it go stage by stage like a flip book of animation? And it's like, well, where do you start? You have to start with where a baby starts. It's a fractal pattern. You start with, hey, I exist. But then there's a dilemma. There has to be the darkness before the light, just like on day 1. Darkness, Hosek, ignorance, illiteracy, nothing happening, unassembled. Just a pile of sticks that you got to turn into a house. It's a pile of Legos that you got to build a castle out of. It's just nothing's assembled yet. So you then have to say, hey, it's my hand. I can put my hand to this, and you have to take on agency. You have to become aware of yourself. Well, if Aleph is being handed a soul, handed a spirit, however you want to give definition, whether it's Greek or Hebrew or English, that's up to your own preference. Bet is the shape of this body, but it's also this shape. The paleo letter bet is this swirl of unfolding. It almost looks like the Greek letter phi in the essence of its formatting and it's called the Mandelbrot set. The geometric manifest looks like the beginning of the shape of the letter bet in Paleo-Hebrew. Embryo shape, tadpole, head of consciousness, backbone extending to arms and legs, the personal becoming social. You lie down in the head. When you rise up, you sit in your house. When you walk on the way, think about them and teach them to your children. So this consciousness, then this enfolding, extending. Stan Tenen talked about that, Miru, but what I'm saying is that's wrapped up in the shape of the letter bet on purpose. That's not an accident. I believe Yahweh built that on purpose. Gimel, the extruded vesicle, going back to the meta poster of Yahweh Echad and saying, what is each one of these letters and what's going on between each one of the letters, and why is there one of these words meta, which seems to refer to the action happening? It's all designed. It's all built on purpose. And as we look at the Hebrew alphabet and we realize the insight into the fractal paradigm of everything is right here. To realize that is one step. To say, what is it then, is another step. To then say, how do I become familiar with it and then put it to use, not only for a tool of effect, but my own thinking. How do I think with kingdom consciousness? And this isn't just, oh, I'm going to take this on as a Gnostic intellectual exercise. Because remember, if Aleph is self-referential of identity and intent, then when Yahuwah says, I am Yahweh, your Elohim, he's explaining who he is and what that means in these very 22 letters, in this very particular order of relationship to each other. It's all on purpose. It's all designed with intent. Much against the scientists who believe it's all random disorder. But he made it look like random disorder to throw them off track. Remember, he said that he put the notion that the stars were guiding and ruling and dominating human effect. He says such a thing was appropriated to all the nations, but not you, Israel. You're not supposed to look to the stars for that. Now, that doesn't mean there's not a message or a way to read what's in the constellations, because Abraham was told to sefer the stars. And the word sefer doesn't mean just count. It means read. It means as a barber as a hairdresser, give shape to hair, establishing points of forts along a frontier that one nation might do against another territory, and then connect the forts with an imaginary line of domination versus wilderness. That's the word sefer, Samic Peresh. As we connect the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, it's sephering, whether it's in the natural order of the 22-letter chronological sequence, or whether it's the letters that are used to compose spelling words, it's still sephering. And if each letter represents some one of a limited set, 22, 5 extra if you count the Sophite as a mini alphabet added on, supplemental. This is Yahweh's personal identity, intent for Project Earth, the universe, humanity, and Israel in particular, and you as this one. It's very personal. So the studying of this alphabet in this regard is the essence of everything. If you couple it, yoke it to Yahuwah's identity, it's like, yeah, but what is that? How do you know if you have an Elohim Achrim, foreign god, god of other god, other deity, translation of Elohim Achrim, or how do you know it's really Yahuwah? How do you know if Jesus Christ or Yeshua is valid? Because his gospel narrative story, the narrative story, the sephering of the events in the gospel narratives, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, match the alphabet letter progression of the Hebrew alphabet pictographically. So why would a guy like Miles Jones write a book called The Writing of God? The Writing of God. But yet the letters mean nothing. God extracted picture value and essence and meaning of the shape of the letters with his own finger writing on the tables of stone, because if he had left and retained pictographic value, why, he'd be carving images of gods. And he wouldn't do that. So the point of Miles Jones' book is that he took away the pictographic value when he wrote the 10 Commandments on the table of stones. It's like, that was the beginning of the meaning. That wasn't the end of the meaning. I mean, was anybody literate before that? Hardly. Deuteronomy 6, in the reading of the Shema that Kurt just put up last week, that Sally was reading. Did you listen to those words? Hear, O Israel, Shema Israel, Yahweh Ohenu. Yahweh, he's identifying who, Israel, who is he, Yahuwah or Elohim, Yahweh Echad. Echad, what is Echad? Unified, one. A different strange voice? Not him, it's an Elohim Achrim. So anything Yeshua said had to match and correlate to these 22 letters. And the 22 letters matched to the Moedim means Yeshua has to be the anthropomorphization. He has to be the manifest in human form of the Moedim. Why? Because the Moedim lock in the meanings of the letters. And they're correlated to the Mishkan. So that means the Mishkan is not just a piece of architecture. The Mishkan elements, the fence, the barbecue grill, the water basin, and then as an interior space within a covered tent area, you've got the menorah, the table of showbread, the altar of incense in this triangle format, and then a veiled exclusion zone of the Ark of the Covenant. And then when the Spirit of Yahuwah is present, you have this pillar of fire, pillar of smoke above that. It was above, billowing over the camp. Those are not just objects of the Mishkan. Those are referential icons with meaning. What do they mean? We have to sit there and look at them. Why would we ever sit there and look at them? They're just reference of architectural elements of a structure that was in the desert 4,000 years ago. Who cares? It's a consciousness. It's Yahweh's consciousness. And if we wrap our minds around it and get it in our heart, we conform to him. That's the use of the language, the benefit of walking in his moedim. The moedim is his moedi. Yeah, they're plural, moedim, with an mem suffix, but he says in Leviticus 23, these are my moedi. Noem. Moedi means personal. Moed. Ed means witness and testimony, but edi also means choice, best, treasure, bejewelment, adornment, ornamentation. These matters, mem prefix, of his ed, witness and testimony, identifying of himself, validating, verifying who he is and what he's about, which is the word asher, aleph shin resh, to authenticate, validate, corroborate, verify, veracity, verily, verily. Yeshua said how many times? That's the same word. Very, verily, absolutely true. Count on it. No question. I'm not lying to you. I'm not twisting anything around. This is the straight truth. The word yashar, straight truth. See, everything Yeshua said had to line up with what Yahweh said, because it had to be exactly according to these 22 letters. Why did he have to die? It's part of the sequence of the letters. The Vav man put to the Zion and put into a tomb, round rock, Tet rolled in front of it, sealed shut, Yod. 3 days and 3 nights later, Pei Zadi coming out of the grave. By him dying, he was validating, authenticating the 22 letters. He was confirming the veracity that this is the Yahuwah utterance, expression, communication. And the word communication, shin yod het, shiach, shich. And for him to be the personification, the objectification, the anthropomorphized human form makes him mem shin yod het, which is translated Mashiach. That means he's the Mashiach, because he's this communication of these 22 letters made mush, tangible, feel, touch, grope, with form, subject to the senses. It's all a play of words. Yeshua's Mashiach. Mashiach is simply translated anointed, well, authorized, shown to be from on high. That's why he had to walk out these 22 letters. This is Yahweh's communication. So for him to, as milestones, trail markers, as forts along the frontier, as mile markers along the path, he's got the elements of the Mishkan, the fence, the barbecue grill, the laver, and those are outside, and then inside, like the bet, the inside, the cranial, and then they're reaching out, so you've got the outside and the inside. So I'm just saying, it seems to be a reverse image. We encounter from the outside and get to the inside, the Holy of Holies, the Kadosh Kodashim. But if you look at how the Israelites, Betzalel and Aholiab built it, but how did they set it up? The Levites came and they set up the Ark of the Covenant first, and then they built the other stuff around it. There's something to the pattern. Everything's according to the pattern. The Tabanit is the word pattern. Tav, Bet Nun Yod Tav. Well, the letters Tav is a prefix and a suffix, kind of say this is locked into the framework of covenant. So it's almost a picture of the Ark of the Covenant, the word Tabanit. Like these two letters Tav, like these two Melachim angels, and in the box, the Ark was the tangible proofs of its reality. The tables of stone with Yahweh's fingerprints. The manna, the jar of manna of this divine provision. Aaron's rod that budded, another miraculous sprout, a zadi. How much proof do we need? For us to walk in his moedim engages us as a theatrical event. We're doing the letters. We're being the letters. He gave us the moedim not just as party days, not just as something to study, but we are being his people by keeping them. We're being the letters of the alphabet. We're being like Yeshua, being the Word made flesh. By us walking in the Moedim, which includes the Sabbath day, we are the Word made flesh. What? Dare I say those words? So the question, the train wreck of consciousness is the question, why would anybody as a group or anybody as an individual, realizing that the Moedim are Yahuwah's choice best treasure of bejewelment and ornamentation of his self, the witness and testimony of his own identity in its purest, most majestic form, and he placed them as Moedim, in the Moedim. And then why would an individual or the collective organization say, we're going to have nothing to do with that? Why, that's Jewish. So we're going to make it illegal, and we're going to invent new festivals, which are amalgamations of pagan ritual, which is exactly what Yahweh said he didn't want his people to do. And we're going to call them such things as Christmas and Easter and Halloween. Is it wrong for us to recognize the problem? Well, then, to recognize that there's an issue, and that the issue is a problem, and that the problem is a catastrophe, it causes a train wreck of existing consciousness. Everything you had going in your life, like a train with purpose and speed and mass and aiming at a destination, and all of a sudden hitting a derailment, it doesn't just stop like somebody stepped on the brake all of a sudden. When you've got those cars traveling at, let's say, about 50 miles an hour, heavily loaded, physics tells you there's momentum, mass, moving through time, and they don't just stop. They just keep going, and that just well, that's what happens when you bump into Yahweh's Torah and you bump into the Hebrew alphabet and you bump into the language and you bump into Yahuwah's name and you bump into the Moedim and the Sabbath day. And if you bump into the Sabbath day with a regard, everything in your life's going to become that train wreck. Because nothing conforms to his ways yet until you do. And whatever you had built in your understanding of science or history or politics or religion or purpose of humanity on the face of the earth, anything you have built in your consciousness must derail and be refit to this paradigm of these letters, built according to the fortresses of the Moedim along the frontier between sanity and insanity, between humanity, life and death. Pretty significant stuff. So what I sent for Kurt to put up, a couple pages. One is building a consciousness. If you think of what has to happen to the rat in the cage, what happens to a baby being born, what happens to all of us? Response to stimuli, provocation. That's like the first beatitude, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. You don't feel poor in spirit? You have no reason to choose life. A hot day, you look for air conditioning. Hungry, you look for a meal. Cold, find a sweater to put on or stand in front of a fire. One day years ago, a friend kept telling me, go to the beach, go to the beach, go to the beach. It's like, I don't have time to go to the beach. Well, finally, after a few years, one day I had to go look at a job down near the beach. So I thought, okay, hey, I'll take my friend's advice. I'll go to the beach. Pacific Ocean in Oregon. What do you think of when you think of the beach? What comes to your mind? Tropical scene, palm trees, mountain, waves, sunshine, sand. This particular day, go to the beach and there was no sun. It was gray. It wasn't exactly fog, but it was all just grayed out. And as a matter of fact, there was not even any waves. It was placid, flat. Why would the ocean have no waves? This particular parking lot, there was not even anybody else there. So I was all alone. Walked up over this little berm, and there's the ocean. Gray. And the temperature, it was so gray, there was no temperature. It must have been right at what, about 75 degrees? It was neither warm nor cold. There was no other engagements, no other people, no other conversations, no other noises, no waves, no sun, not either cold or hot. And I'm just sitting there and it's like, well, what the heck is this? This is nothing. This isn't being at the beach. What about the tropics? This is nothing. I sat there for probably an hour or two, trying to engage being at the beach. Finally, one person showed up and was kind of walking along the beach, and it's like, well, if you think about it, it's like, that's the white piece of paper on the wall in the museum. It's nothing, but it's a spectacular piece of art. How many times you go to the beach and the beach is nothing? I was left to my own thoughts, which instead of being able to appreciate were kind of nothing, but the nothingness was something. The something was, now don't you appreciate whether it's hot or cold? Well, it's cold, I need to get warm. It's hot, I need to cool down. Yeah, now you're driven, you're agitated. So it goes back to response to stimuli. Agitate the rat. Welcome to Earth. That's just the arets. Aleph, Resh, Zadi, I will run. Aleph, I will, Resh, Zadi, run like rats. Rats run. It's an obstacle course. It's a gamut. That's what he built. So I look back and say, wow, what a day of nothing. That nothing was the something, which was fantastic, though I had no appreciation at the time. Thought we're supposed to be, body surfing on big waves like down in Malibu or something. Anyway, if you go back to like a little baby, gosh, they're born, hey, wonderful, the baby's born. It's like they got a long haul in front of them, not just learning how to read and write and count and do gymnastics, play music. Gosh, self-awareness, I feel. Then cognition, recognition. Cog, like a tooth on a sprocket that engages an a gear wheel, like a bicycle with a chain. And then we learn to respond to provocation with either fight or flight or stand still. We have to learn to either engage or ignore, so parents tell their children, one of the kids is mouthing off, just ignore them. Somebody else mouth is off, go punch them in. It's like, what? Is fighting really an option? Well, it has to be at some point. And look what Yahweh said to Israel. Sometimes he said, be loving and kind, and sometimes he said, go kill them all. And it's like, what? How do you learn when? It has to be learned. The reaction to something of either pleasure or pain with reward or punishment, like the rats in the cage. And then we have to sit there and say, well, I learned through the school of hard knocks. It was my own experience. What if you can learn from the experience of your parents or the experience of others, like reading Bible stories or reading history books? If you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it, they say. Okay, so the analytics of experience, determine models of certainty or plausibility. It's like you sit there and you see these little bugs on the ground and you poke one and he bites you. It's like, doggone it. Is it a little ant, or maybe it's a scorpion, or maybe it's a rattlesnake? Why'd he bite me? Is it poisonous? That's what they do. It's like, well, then don't do that. Where do kids learn this stuff? Watching TV? You think the TV is going to teach them? That's what parents are for. But if the parents don't care, then how are the kids going to learn to care? Well, it should be common sense. There's no common sense. We don't innately, we just learn stuff. That's not the way the planet's built. If you think the way it's built, your kids are not going to be able to think very straight. So science then is looking what happened and trying to figure out what is the order. There's an order. It's not random chaos. He built it for human mind to be able to assess it. Same thing as the Hebrew language. It was built on purpose for us to wrap our mind around. It's a very scientific event to study this language. So the whole idea that there's mechanics of the universe, see, a lot of people will say there's no mechanics of the universe. Shut up, you're an idiot, and throw it away and not even want to engage this. But yet, gravity, if you get close to the edge of that cliff and you fall and you get hurt, it's your own fault. You should know. What do you mean? When Adam was in the garden, there was no harm and there's no injury, right? What would have happened if Adam stepped over the edge of a cliff? Would he get hurt when he fell? Maybe there were no cliffs in the garden. If he twisted his ankle on a stone, would he have gotten hurt before there was sin? Was there any damage or injury which needed repair before they ever ate of that tree? Nobody knows. But if Adam didn't know about gravity and Adam never got hurt until after he ate of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, what do you think happened when he was kicked out of the garden and he's walking around and he sees a cliff and he sees other birds just leap off and fly? Do you think he thought he could leap off and fly, and he takes a step and boom, crash, oh gosh, broken leg. Yeah, good one, Adam. It's like, wow, how did he learn this to the point where he says to his children, don't do that? Science. Science is determining what works. If you look at the choose life, the big white fence, here's a problem, darkness, here's the light, big white fence, choose life. Okay, I'm Yahweh your Elohim. I just bought you and owned you. Now you have to learn my ways. There's ways? Oh yes, the Torah. Learn my ways. Okay. Don't step off the cliff. You'll get hurt, badly hurt. You might even die if you eat that fruit, if you step over the cliff and it's a big cliff. What if he's lying to you? So as soon as he tells us the truth, he lets the Nachash, the serpent, come in and say, I think he's lying to you. You're going to believe the guy who's telling you that he who swore to tell the truth is telling you a lie? That when he says, these are my ways, Israel, this is the truth. If you walk in the Torah, then I will bless you forever. And if you don't, you will get cursed. And these words, the veracity of these words, it will endure forever. Especially, you can say, as long as the heaven and earth exists, these words are true. And then somebody comes up and says, nah, they're not true. They're nailed to the cross. Really? You're going to believe that voice instead of believing his? You see a sense of a bit of a train wreck happening? He said the seventh day was the holy day, the day Yom HaKadosh, the day that he set apart by some mechanics of the universe on the seventh day of creation, Genesis chapter 2. And he says it's a fixture of the universe. The universe somehow is built around that seventh day being kadosh, unlike any other, like the letter Zion, set apart, cut off, its own thing, like the Kadosh Kodashim, where the Ark of the Covenant was behind a veil, inside a tent, behind the curtain of the Mishkan itself, set apart, set apart, set apart, kadosh, 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 is that day. And then certain individuals of a universal assembly said, we're going to change the day from the 7th to the 1st. We're going to prove it and validate it by saying Jesus rose from the dead that day, but we're going to change the day from the 7th to the 1st, and that will authorize, that will validate our authority that says, that proves to humanity forevermore that our spoken voice supersedes the authority of written scripture and the voice speaking the commandments from heaven on Mount Sinai. Our voice is more authoritative than that voice. And every human intellect which listens to our voice and behaves itself according to our demands forever for the next 2,000 years bows the knee to our authority. That's what they say. I've heard them on the radio say that. Isn't there a train wreck happening here to say, what? That's not Yahweh, my Elohim of Israel. That must be an Elohim Achrim. If it's not Yahweh's voice, is it the voice of the devil? Is it the voice of the Nachash, the twisted serpent? but they wear white robes. Well, some of them wear black robes. Well, they got both bases covered. Well, they have funny hats. In fact, their bishop hats look like the mitre of Dagon, the fish god. You know, the guy who got his hands broken off when he fell over 2 or 3 times in the temple of the Philistines. You know, they have hats that look like Dagon. They must be true. They must be right. They must be holy. I mean, they've got wonderful holidays and festivities around the winter solstice and the vernal equinox. I mean, that's got to be right? It's got to be right. It's not Yahweh. It's a different consciousness. It's a different kingdom. It's a different words. It's different everything. Unless you don't notice that it's a different everything, because that's all you ever were taught, and you thought that it was everything. You have to have a system, a reference of comparison to know it's a different everything. What's the comparison? What Yahweh said. So the question is, but if Jesus Christ is the icon archetype reference of the entire paradigm of that consciousness, and he gives his people, his ambassadors, his prophets, his teachers, if he gives them real-time human experience of miraculous wonders, flying up to heaven or healing people or casting out demons or manifesting people rising from the dead or giving them food out of thin air, oil weeping out of Bibles, jewels appearing, teeth appearing, gold in your teeth. Isn't that proof? Isn't that proof that it's valid? What did Yahweh give Israel? Yahweh Echad. One, singular, according to what? The 22 letters, which includes being choreographed to the fixture fortresses of the Moedim, which are bastions of events correlated to the Mishkan. The fence, the barbecue grill, the laver, the menorah, the table of showbread, the altar of incense, and the Ark of the Covenant. They're fixtures, bastion fortresses, paradigm thematic graphic symbols, regulating the consciousness of Yahweh with his Israel human consciousness. And if any prophet of any other religion is counter or divergent, different than that, by definition, it's Elohim Achrim, different God, other, not the same. If he designed this universe that it could be rationally, logically determined, assessed for value, organized, indexed, lined up and seen as orchestrated, that it was made with intelligent design, directed with purpose and intent, then common sense is to see that and behave accordingly. And if it means we need to train wreck our entire consciousness, ditch it, trash it, lose it, to be rescued. Hey, that's that word flit. To be flit from the goyim. Escape, vomited out, discharged, rescued, where we get the word flight and float and flatulence. What? Escape. Oh, something just escaped. Oh, sorry about that. To some, this might be so much flatulence, but it's to flit of the goyim, to escape. Thank you, Yahweh, for rescuing us. As a detective, your job as a scientist, look at the evidence. Look at the scene of the crime. Look at the clues he gave us. He left us 22 fixtures, fit to the 7 22 divided by 7. Hey, that's 3.14. Hey, thank you, Pythagoras. You showed us something about the way the geometry of the universe is built. The relationship between a radius and the circumference of a circle. When you see something is out of phase, out of sync, the vibe isn't there. Different spirit. Is the spirit of Yahuwah expressed by those who have so alienated themselves from Yahweh's personal witness, testimony, bejewelment, ornamentation of his Moedim, that they don't even recognize that it's him. It's a different, strange God to them. And then you read in the scripture where he said, you will be so absorbed by the Goyim, the Gentiles, that you will forget who I am. You'll lose all reference of who I am until in the future, the remnant of you scattered across the face of the earth into the Goyim nations will come back to my Shabbat, come back to my Moedim, come back to my name, come back to my language.
And I shall be a God to thee and thy son, and to thy son's son, and to all thy seed. Fear not, from henceforth and unto all generations of the earth. I am thy God. And the Lord God said, Open his mouth and his ears, that he may hear and speak with his mouth with the language which hath been revealed. For it had ceased from the mouths of all the children of men from the day of the overthrow of Babel. And I opened his mouth and his ears and his lips, and I began to speak with him in Hebrew, in the tongue of the creation.
Come back to my covenant that I made with Israel. And at that time, I will regather you and bring you back and give you all the promises I promised your forefathers. So this other page here is a reiteration, another time of the Mishkan pattern, starting in the darkness, illiterate, ignorant, unaware, victim, subject to forces and circumstances, the big white fence. So recognizing the problem of noticing the evidence, the detective work. You hear the voice in Deuteronomy. It's not the same voice you hear in the New Testament. It's there, but you don't hear it the same as when Moshe said, I hereby, right now, I put before you life and death, blessing and cursing, and you have to choose. And I suggest you choose life. And that is where it starts. You have to volitionally, proactively, intentionally make the choice. And if you don't make the choice, by default, you're dead. Life has to be a choice. And it's not just, oh yeah, I choose to go to heaven when I die. No, every day you have to choose to eat, choose to drink water, choose to do the proper thing, choose not to step over the cliff on purpose, though you might be driven by mental activity or circumstances or people chasing you to go over the cliff. Colonel McCulloch, in I think it was Ohio, an ancestor of mine, being chased by very angry savages. Native Americans ran his horse over I think it was like a 200-foot cliff, and they expected him to be smashed at the bottom, but he ended up running away on the horse. Somehow he survived. It was like this miraculous intervention. Colonel McCulloch, 1700s, I believe. Anyway, I'm just saying that, getting back on track here. Choose life. There's rules, regulations, laws, constitution, protocols. That's the Torah. That's the altar of sacrifice. That's the barbecue grill. Then what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? Who am I? That's the laver. Who am I? Then the menorah. Bear fruit. Who am I? Am I athletic? Am I musically inclined? Do I have any interest in art or culinary or study or mechanics or agriculture? What am I doing on the face of the earth? I'm born into a time and place that's like the positions of the stars in the sky put on day 4. Be all you can be, just do it, rise and shine, bear fruit, Galatians 5:22. your talents, abilities, traits, interests, you just got a knack at it, you're gifted, or you study to become it, be determinably, that's the menorah. Be yourself. And then the table of showbread, lining up with the letter ayin, mishpat. A man's way will be returned on his own head, measure for measure. Bear that in mind as you're being who you are. Your own way is going to be returned upon you. And then the altar of incense, the letter pei, your heart's cry, lining up with the beatitude, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see Elohim. The heart's cry. Is it a prayer? Is it thanks? If it's just relationship, is it asking why and why not? Please and thank you. It's the angst expressed of being human. And the right in front of the other side of that veil in the Mishkan is the Ark of the Covenant, where Yahuwah says, I will be your Elohim, and you will be my people. That hope set before us. Ani ladodi vedodi li. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. I am his kadoshi, and he is mine. And that stream of consciousness then goes back in, right there at the Ark of the Covenant, goes into the pillar of fire and pillar of smoke, which picks you up like smoke rising and falling back and throwing us back outside to the dilemma of the darkness and illiteracy. This is a flow of consciousness. This is like water which evaporates, which moves in a cloud and becomes rain again, which we're reading about there in Proverbs 30. The fractal model of this thinking, according to the fixture of this Mishkan pattern, is played out in the ecosystem of nature and in life itself. And so the third page that I had was, I sent it to you last week, which we never really talked about too much. It's just writing up the days of creation, the Moedim, the Mishkan pattern, the Beatitudes, and then correlated to the letters of the alphabet. In a circumstance of trouble is Havav Zion. Pilate saying, behold this man, look what we did to him. Yeah, we hit him with the Roman flail and tore him apart. Hey, behold, Vav, the man, Zion, put to the weapon. And then ending up with coming out of the grave, Zadi, but then after this is the Kuf, is this other promise, is like Kumi, Hamakom, the rising up, the place, Yeshua coming back, him restoring his promise, Yahuwah restoring the promise of his abiding with his people. That song by Yam Ensemble, Mi Makomka, Mi Makom. Mi is the word who, Mem Yod, Makom, Kom, Kufav Mem, means to rise up, Kufav Mem, or to plant down. It's the back of the head, the letter Kuf, or letter Q, like that fractal model of the Greek letter Phi. It's that monkey's arm reaching out into the future, like Cygnus the swan that goes out to the other side of the universe, but then comes back. There's all these parallel voices. So Kuf, the monkey, is reaching out to the future, reaching back to the past with the monkey tail, swinging through the trees and realizing if we take on the consciousness that Yahuwah gave his people, there's victory, there's success. Zadikah. The word Zadikah is both victory and righteousness. It's a play on words where Yahweh built into the mechanics of the universe that righteousness wins. It's not the Hollywood movie keeps showing you where the bad guys seem to win. The bad guys will only appear to win as long as Israel does not listen to the voice of Yahuwah. And he also built into the system that when his people, if, 2 Chronicles, what is it, chapter 7, if, conditional, my people, if you're not his people, he's not talking to you, who are called by my name. How many people are called by the name of Yahuwah? The JWs? Who else is called by his name? Only the people that call on the name Yahuwah. How many people is that? If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, humble, Aleph Nun Hey, like in the Isaiah 58, well, that means make it your occupation. Make it your burden to regard and pay attention and respond. That's the word humble. Humbled and afflicted and oppressed. It translates fasting. Make it your concern. Will humble themselves and pray? Engage in the cry of your heart? Mimakomka, when will you do what you said you would? You even told David to write about it. We're only responding to what we read. Will you listen to our voice? Only when we listen to his voice. Humble themselves and pray and seek my face with all their heart and all their soul. Then I will hear, and I will heal their land. So Israel is at the helm. We who are called by his name, who regard his matters, who choose to walk in his ways, regard his Shabbat, his Moedim, his language, his name, and will wreck our entire life, like the train wreck, for the sake of rebuilding his consciousness that he gave his people. Why did the ant bite me? He was allowed to because he wouldn't listen to Yahweh's voice. What? The ant? The ant, the scorpion, the New World Order, the Illuminati, who? CIA, the KGB, whoever you think is the bad guy. They're only empowered to be bad guys over Israel as long as Israel won't listen to Yahweh's voice. We start listening to his voice and behave accordingly, it'll change the world. It'll change the universe. Everything changes because that's the plan that Yahweh instituted. That's the Pezadi. But Pezadi is not necessarily the end. Remember, Yeshua rose from the dead and hung around for 40 days. 40 days before he koofed. And coming back koof. So there's a couple different ways to read the picture. Once we come back to consciousness, it's a whole new world. And he said he'd pour out his blessing on us. It says so in the book of Jubilees. It says so in Deuteronomy. It says so in Isaiah and Jeremiah. Anyway, we're out of time. Open it up to you real quick. Is anything anybody else want to say as a regard before we have to shut this off?
Love that. Thank you so much, Eric.
Okay, so we got to pray and close it out. So who would like that task?
Abba, Yahuwah, the gratitude that pours out from my heart, I cannot express to you in mere words. Father, you've heard the cry of my heart. You've poured your Ruach into Eric and to allow him to bring alive your word. Father, thank you that we even get to be a part of your adventure. Father, thank you that you've allowed us to take precious time that Eric has offered, and you've offered us to be here in this venue at this moment, at this time. Father, your word, may it go out and not return void. Father, in the name of Yeshua, I pray. Thank you, Abba. Amen.
Amen.
Man.
And he finished all his work on the 6th day. All that is in the heavens and on the earth and in the seas and in the abysses and in the light and in the darkness and in everything. And he gave us a great sign, the Sabbath day, that we should work 6 days, but keep Sabbath on the 7th day from all work. And all the angels of the presence and all the angels of sanctification, these 2 great classes, he hath hidden us to keep the Sabbath with him in heaven and on earth. And he said unto us, Behold, I will separate unto myself a people from among all the peoples, and these will keep the Sabbath day. And I will sanctify them unto myself as my people, and will bless them. As I have sanctified the Sabbath day, and do sanctify it unto myself, even so shall I bless them. And they will be my people, and I shall be their God. And I have chosen the seed of Jacob from amongst all that I have seen, and I have written him down as my firstborn son, and have sanctified him unto myself for ever and ever. And I will teach them the Sabbath day, that they may keep Sabbath thereon from all work. And thus he created therein a sign in accordance with which they should keep the Sabbath with us on the 7th day, to eat and to drink, and to bless him who hath created all things, as he hath blessed and sanctified unto himself a peculiar people above all peoples, and that they should keep Sabbath together with us. And he caused his commands to ascend as a sweet savour, acceptable before him all the days. There were 22 heads of mankind from Adam to Jacob, and 22 kinds of work which were made until the 7th day. This is blessed and holy, and the former also is blessed and holy, and this one serves with that one for sanctification and blessing. And to this Jacob and his seed it was granted that they should always be the blessed and holy ones of the first testimony and law, even as he had sanctified and blessed the Sabbath day on the 7th day. He created heaven and earth and everything that he created in 6 days. And God made the 7th day holy for all his works. Therefore he commanded on its behalf that whoever doth any work thereon shall die, and that he who defileth it shall surely die. Wherefore do thou command the children of Israel to observe this day, that they may keep it holy, and not do thereon any work, and not to defile it, as it is holier than all other days. And whoever profaneth it shall surely die, and whoever doeth thereon any work shall surely die eternally, that the children of Israel may observe this day throughout their generations, and not be rooted out of the land. For it is a holy day, and a blessed day. And every one who observeth it and keepeth Sabbath thereon from all his work will be holy and blessed throughout all days, like unto us. Declare and say to the children of Israel the law of this day, both that they should keep Sabbath thereon, and that they should not forsake it in the error of their hearts, and that it is not lawful to do any work thereon which is unseemly, to do thereon their own pleasure, and that they should not prepare thereon anything to be eaten or drunk, which they had not prepared for themselves on the 6th day in their dwellings, and that it is not lawful to draw water, or bring in or take out thereon, through their gates, any burden. And they shall not bring in nor take out from house to house on that day. For that day is more holy and blessed than any Jubilee day of the Jubilees. On this we kept Sabbath in the heavens, before it was made known to any flesh to keep Sabbath thereon on the earth. And the Creator of all things blessed it. But he did not sanctify all peoples and nations to keep Sabbath thereon, but Israel alone. Them alone he permitted to eat and drink and to keep Sabbath thereon on the earth. And the Creator of all things blessed this day which he had created for a blessing and a sanctification and a glory above all days. This law and testimony was given to the children of Israel as a law forever unto their generations.